Now, the legacy of Stan Lee, to me, even though I didn't grow up on the 60s material, I grew up on the late 80s to 90s material of the characters. It was only years later, as I got older, that I get the trade paperbacks and earlier issues. Before the late 1990s, when they had the black and white essentials and then the color stuff, the only other way to get the early stuff was the Masterworks books, and the Masterworks were like $50 for 10 issues. It was not affordable, especially for someone like me back then. So the only way to get the classic materials was really that line, and it was only until more modern eras did reprinting become popular that the past material became affordable, and they stacked up a good amount of issues like you get now. It started with black and white versions and then on to the color versions, and stuff like omnibuses and all of this stuff in the past 10 years plus, that you really didn't have it. Even in the 1990s, you didn't have reprints like now, you know? And it was only when I got older that I see the early stuff and collected more, you know, see the early adventures and the early beginnings of these characters, you know? So I really like that stuff and the stuff I grew up with, the 80s to 90s stories. Stan Lee, whatever people might say, he maybe got too much credit, or the artists, especially the two of them, you know, maybe they did more. So all that's possible, right? And I think that artists deserve a lot more credit than they got. But without Stan Lee there, these characters wouldn't exist as you know him, and they'd probably not even be popular. He was like the chairman of the Marvel company. He was like the mascot, promoting it all the time, and he was like the figurehead, and in a good way, because promoting him promoted the books promoted him. It was all beneficial. You know, it's like they say with Walt Disney, he was the head. It's the same thing with Stan Lee, or just like Vince McMahon is the head of WWE, the face of the company. And that's part of the reason of WWE's success is Vince McMahon, in terms of being the figurehead, and people know it. And part of the reason with Marvel is Stan Lee is that figurehead of the company. In a good way. He was also a guy who, again, as we know him, or first were introduced, was like the Amazing Friends, or the voiceover work he did for cartoons and other stuff, and even some video games. He did the voiceover work, and it really helped not only build him up for fans, it built up just that relationship with the fans, you know, and with the characters. And the truth is, as I had mentioned, even though he worked with great artists, the dialogues in the final printed page, even if he reworked the dialogue, like the artists would leave dialogue on the pages sometimes. Plus, John Romita Sr. perfectly said it, that when he worked with Stan, he would take stuff that Romita Sr. thought didn't make too much sense, or it wasn't too good, that he thought his work was, and then Stan Lee would make it, he would fix it up that it would look like it was planned that way from the beginning. Like he made it better than what it would have been originally, you know? Stan Lee always said the best character he wrote, oddly, was Spidey and Silver Surfer, but he really liked the Silver Surfer because it was his philosophy of life, about humanity, and it's like a very hopeful message his characters gave. I would say his characters overall gave a hopeful message, and the best thing he did was also he made the characters, even he said it, vulnerable, feet of clay, that you were sympathetic towards, that the DC heroes were like perfect, were like gods, right? They didn't have any flaws, really. Bruce Wayne is perfectly healthy. He's a millionaire, or a billionaire now. He could do or buy anything he wants, and he's like flawless in a way. It's the same with Superman. Superman is pretty much flawless. They're mythical beings. And that's the appeal of that level. But for other fans who want another level, Stan Lee's heroes or co-creations were mostly, when you look back on it, they say, feet of clay. They were flawed. They were not perfect. Spider-Man had a host of troubles, financial, job, relationships, and he always made those relationships with three people. Like, there was a supporting cast member, there was the main hero, there was a girl there that the hero could like. You had a lot of the Hulk. No one would want to be the Hulk, considering it's part of Bruce Banner's psyche, and there's one half and the other at war with each other. It's a really little Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, Frankenstein. There is a little... The original Cyclops and the original X-Men was the one I liked the most, but he was also the one who, with his eye beams, had to be covered all the time. He was the most sympathetic. The Thing, who couldn't transform back to a normal human being, was the best character of the Fantastic Four. It was like all the human and flaws, and it always brought the characters that had a more human appeal, I would say. And again, his legacy, the characters, the stories, the actual stories you could read, so many of them he made, and the characters, that's not only the heroes, but the villains and the supporting characters who lasted. And what the thing is a surprising number of these characters have always been in the mix. Even if they're not published monthly, they're regulars, they're semi-regulars. They are not characters who were published and then 10 years later someone revives it, it plays up a little bit, and then goes away, and then 5 or 10 years later someone starts it up again. You know, there's characters like that who have a little start, go away, no one's doing anything with them for a long time, and then it comes back a little. That's not really a popular character. That's not really a lasting character. Someone who's been published monthly, or around every year, or gets cancelled, but it's in a team book, or somewhere, somehow a regular. That's what I'm talking about. So many heroes, villains, and characters that he had a hand in help make a universe, you know? If you had to pick 10 Marvel favorite heroes or villains, a Stan Lee co-creation is probably in there. Without him, the Marvel universe would not exist as you know it. Even with those artists, it wouldn't exist. It wouldn't have been how it became so popular. It's hard to imagine it could be better, because it couldn't. Just like WWE without Vince McMahon would not be at the level it is. It just wouldn't, okay? Again, his legacy is... It's the characters. It's the stories and the world. Even though he did work after and some independent stuff in the 90s, and he made a company, POW, and then again, the people above him did financial weird dealings and a whole bunch of weird stuff in the last few years. But he was always, I guess the best thing you could say about Stan was he enjoyed his life. You know, he enjoyed his work, his career, meeting fans. He was just, the friendly attitude is, you can't fake the overall, you know. Maybe you could fake aspects, but you can't fake the big picture, that he was a friendly guy that liked to get along with people. You know, he was just a nice guy with a positive outlook on life. And again, guys like John Romita Sr. or Gene Colan said Stan was fantastic to work with, you know. He was an easy editor, because some editors will keep rejecting stuff, and artists didn't like that or put them down. He was positive to the artists, he was encouraging, and he was a good boss to work with, basically. Easy editor to get along with. On a different note is, I don't think, to me, just to me personally, the era of comic books, especially Marvel, especially either comic books, Marvel, or at least the popularity, he's the last one. That's it. You know, everything after is different. People would say, you know, there are others around like John Romita Sr. and some others who worked in the 60s. But even they will tell you this was after the main characters were all built. In other words, the world was already built, and they were the second wave. Guys like Gene Colan, John Romita Sr., Buscema, They were the second wave. But it was already established. It was already done by Stan Lee and company. So they picked up the baton. They were not the first wave. They were not. Okay. So of the initial wave of that 60s, he's there. He's the man, you know, him and the artist that he worked with then. And he's the last of that old guard. The true, someone said in a comment, titans. He's the last one. There's no others after at that level. Most creators would be lucky if they had 5 characters that ever became really popular. Or had their hand co-creations making 5 characters that ever became really popular in culture. Heroes or villains. And most can't. Most don't. He lived a great life, but he was also, again, he enjoyed it. And that's the best reward I could think of, that he enjoyed it. And had fun, you know, had a lot of fun in it overall. And I know the last few years were very rough on him, it seems, health-wise and other stuff. But overall, big picture. And he's the last of that god. I really do feel that. Like, DC dominated the Golden Age with their best characters were in the Golden Age. And Marvel only had Captain America and Namor from the Golden Age who really mattered. And Bucky to a lesser degree, okay? And the Red Skull, the bad guy, 4. The rest of the Marvel Golden Age is not really interesting. But with the Silver Age, a lot of the DC Silver Age is just not too good. Very campy, nothing really lasting. Nothing that would read well today. But a lot of the Marvel stuff, communist stuff and all, is fun. It still reads well, it still reads enjoyable. And the Silver Age was Marvel's best age, the 1960s. You know, the closest I got to Stan Lee was a convention, New York Comic Con, a couple of years ago. I think I even had a video on it somewhere. There was when he walked by the big hallway, a huge crowd, absolutely huge, wanted to follow him. And I was there. I was within a big room. That's the closest I got, but. And he was walking around, he seemed friendly, you know. He's the man, right? There was so many people, and I knew I couldn't go to an autograph signing because it was expensive. But also I knew if you went, you'd be waiting there literally like all day. And it was too much, you know. I'm not a fan of waiting. You'd be waiting so long, expensive ticket, and it just, nah. I'd be okay without it, you know. And that's okay. I'm okay without it. But, so I was there. I seen the man. And the reaction of the crowds, you know. Of the characters that are popular, and the movies that are popular, a lot of that stuff he had a hand in terms of the characters, and the world he helped create there. You got Netflix's Daredevil, okay? You got the MCU heroes. You got the original X-Men, not Wolverine, but the original 5, Professor X, Magneto. You got Doctor Doom, very popular, Fantastic Four. A lot of this stuff on film. Not to mention all the cartoons we liked growing up. Plus his name was a lot in the executive producers. I don't think maybe he had much input, but they always put him in the credits for these series, right? So that's it. Just my thoughts on it. Let me know what you think. The last true greats of the comics. All others that are coming after are now, it's like, not at that level, I would say, and could it ever be again, you know? That's just my view on it. One of the last, you know, wow, what could you say? So, that's it.